The Galactic Council was a sight of unparalleled grandeur. A massive chamber, carved from the heart of a dying star, glowed with a faint golden hue. Around its circular table sat the most powerful beings in the known universe, rulers, warlords, and scholars from civilizations that had ruled for millennia. Some bore forms of pure energy, while others had towering bodies of stone or flesh. They represented empires that spanned galaxies, species that had mastered time, and minds that had witnessed the birth of stars. Yet, despite all their power, there was something in the chamber that unsettled them all. At the very center of the council, among thrones of jeweled metal and living crystal, one seat remained empty. It was a chair unlike any other, Earth's throne. The seat was simple in design, made of polished black stone, without the extravagant decorations the other rulers had. It had remained unclaimed for centuries, untouched, as if the very idea of sitting upon it was a crime. Relkor, a young diplomat from the Scifi Dominion, shifted uncomfortably. He had attended countless council meetings in his short career, but this was his first time seeing the throne up close. There was something about it, something unsettling, a presence that did not exist yet refused to be ignored. Curiosity burned inside him. He had studied galactic politics, read historical records, yet none mentioned why Earth's throne remained empty. Humanity was a forgotten mystery, a name that barely existed in the archives. He had to know. Taking a deep breath, he stood and addressed the council. His voice, though strong, carried a hint of hesitation. Honored leaders of the galaxy, I ask a question that many have thought, but none have spoken. A hush fell over the chamber. Some of the older members stiffened, while others cast nervous glances at one another. Relkor continued, his gaze fixed on the empty seat. Earth's throne has been vacant for as long as our records go back. Why? Where are the humans? A long silence followed. The air itself seemed to grow heavier. Relkor expected answers, maybe even laughter at his ignorance. Instead, he saw fear, true, unfiltered fear. The eldest of the council, a being older than most stars, shifted uncomfortably in its golden seat. Its many eyes, usually sharp and calculating, darted away from the throne, avoiding it as if merely looking at it was dangerous. Relkor frowned. This was not the reaction he had expected. Another leader, a reptilian warlord from the Drask Empire, exhaled sharply. His scales, which normally shone like polished steel, looked dull under the chamber's light. His voice, usually booming with pride, was barely above a whisper. Do not ask about Earth. The young diplomat's confusion deepened. But surely, someone must know what happened to them. Humanity was once part of the council, wasn't it? The warlord clenched his jaw, his claws digging into the armrests of his throne. One of the elder scholars of the Valdari Archives, an ancient race known for preserving the history of the cosmos, finally spoke. Her voice trembled, her luminous form flickering with unease. Yes, they were. She hesitated. And then, they left. Relkor frowned. Left? You mean they abandoned the council? No. The scholar's glow dimmed further. They abandoned the galaxy. A chill ran down his spine. The council chamber was the heart of power, a gathering of the strongest minds and rulers in the universe. Yet here they were, speaking of humans as if they were something to be feared. The silence stretched once more, thick with unspoken memories. Relkor pressed on, unable to hold back his curiosity. But why does no one claim their throne? Surely, if they are gone, another can take their place. The tension in the room deepened. The warlord's claws tightened. The scholar's glow flickered even more. Someone was about to speak. Then, an ancient voice, cracked with age, but filled with weight, broke the silence. It belonged to the oldest member of the council, a being so ancient that even the longest-lived species barely remembered its name. Its many eyes, black as the void between galaxies, slowly turned toward Relkor. The ruler of Earth, the being's voice echoed, carrying a weight that pressed against the souls of all present. Never needed to sit. Relkor's breath caught in his throat. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The implications were terrifying. A throne symbolized authority, command, power. It was where rulers sat to dictate the fate of billions. But Earth's ruler, they had never needed to sit upon it, because their authority had never been questioned, because their power had never been challenged, because even now, even after they had vanished, the galaxy still feared them. Relkor looked back at the empty seat, his throat dry. For the first time, he understood why no one dared sit upon Earth's throne. It was not because they respected humanity. It was because they were terrified they might return. And if they did, the universe would never be the same again. Relkor couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The way the elder races reacted, the weight in their voices, it wasn't just respect for Earth, it was fear. But why? He had always been taught that humans were just another species, one that had vanished from the galactic stage long ago. If they were truly gone, then why did their absence still cast such a heavy shadow? Relkor turned toward the elder who had spoken, their black, void-like eyes locking onto him. He swallowed hard but forced himself to ask, what happened to them? The elder hesitated, glancing around the chamber. Some of the oldest members gave subtle shakes of their heads, as if warning him not to continue. But the silence was already broken. The truth had been waiting to be spoken. The elder exhaled, their form shifting slightly, as if weighed down by memories. You ask what happened to Earth. I will tell you. The chamber remained deathly silent as the elder's voice carried across the room. We fought them. Relkor felt his chest tighten. A war. The galaxy had fought humans. The elder continued, their voice steady, but carrying an edge of regret. Long ago, before the Council's rule was absolute, the galaxy was divided into factions. Empires sought dominance. Conflicts were common, but they followed a balance. A game of power where rules were obeyed. Then we encountered Earth. A murmur spread through the chamber. Some of the younger diplomats exchanged confused glances. Humanity's name was almost forgotten in modern times. The elder ignored them and continued. At first, they were small. A single system, barely beyond their homeworld. They should have been insignificant. But they weren't. Relkor leaned forward. Why? The elder's many eyes darkened. Asterisk, asterisk, because they did not follow the rules. They did not understand restraint. When they fought to win. They did not see war as a game of power, but as survival. And survival was something they excelled at. The chamber remained still. We tried to conquer them. Relkor's heart pounded. The elder exhaled slowly. We failed. A heavy silence followed. The warlord from the Drask Empire, a veteran of countless battles, crossed his arms. That's impossible, he growled. No single species can stand against the might of the galaxy. Even the strongest fall when the Council unites. The elder's gaze met his. That is where you are wrong. Earth was never the strongest. The warlord scoffed. Then how did they win? The elder's next words sent a chill through the chamber. Because they would not stop. Relkor frowned. What do you mean? The elder closed their eyes, as if recalling something they wished to forget. We thought we had crushed them. We burned their colonies. We destroyed their fleets. We shattered their world. Relkor's breath caught. You destroyed Earth. The elder nodded. We thought that was the end. A cold silence followed. Relkor could feel it. The atmosphere had shifted. The air was heavier, the tension in the room almost suffocating. Something about the way the elder spoke, the way the older members avoided looking at the empty throne. Something was wrong. The elder finally opened their eyes. But it wasn't the end. Relkor's hands tightened into fists. This was the part that wasn't written in the history records. The war didn't end when Earth fell. The elder's voice was barely above a whisper. That was when they truly began to fight. The chamber remained frozen, every leader listening with silent dread. They adapted. They rebuilt. They turned their ruins into weapons, They used the destruction we left behind to fuel their vengeance. They fought in ways we could never anticipate, with strategies we could not counter. For every world we took from them, they took 3 in return. Relkor felt a chill run through him. We fought for survival. The elder's voice grew quieter. They fought for something far worse. The warlord narrowed his eyes. And what was that? The elder looked at the empty throne. They fought to make sure no one would ever dare challenge them again. Silence. No one spoke. Relkor could barely breathe. What had humanity done? Finally, the warlord scoffed, breaking the silence. This is nonsense. If they were so powerful, then where are they now? The elder did not answer immediately. Instead, they simply whispered, "Gone." Relkor's pulse quickened. "Gone where?" The elder looked away. Their voice haunted. "We do not know." The warlord scoffed again. So they ran. Typical. The elder turned their black eyes toward him. And for the first time, a hint of something dark flickered within them. "No," the elder whispered. "They disappeared." Relkor swallowed. The elder's voice remained cold. One day, their fleets stopped attacking. Their planets went silent. Their last transmission was simple: "This galaxy is no longer our concern." Then they vanished. Relkor shook his head. "That doesn't make sense. A species cannot just disappear." The elder leaned forward. "And yet, they did." Another silence. Then the elder spoke again. "Do you understand now, young one, why no one sits upon that throne?" Relkor looked at the empty seat once more. It wasn't just empty. It was waiting. And somewhere, so were the humans. The silence stretched across the chamber, heavy and suffocating. Relkor could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the elder's words pressing against his chest. Humanity had disappeared. But how? The warlord of the Drask Empire was the first to break the silence. He let out a low growl, arms crossed over his armored chest. "Vanished. Impossible. No species simply disappears." The elder did not argue. Instead, they sighed, their many eyes dimming as if looking into a past they wished they could forget. "We thought the same." Relkor hesitated. "You mean, you looked for them?" The elder turned their gaze toward him, and for the first time, Relkor saw something deeper in those ancient eyes. Fear. Of course we did. At first, we assumed they had hidden, that they were rebuilding in the shadows, preparing for one final war. A few of the younger diplomats exchanged glances. The idea was absurd. No empire, no matter how powerful, could sustain itself indefinitely in hiding. We sent scouts, fleets, spies. We searched every world they had ever touched, every system they had ever mapped. But we found nothing. Not a single outpost. Not a single distress beacon. Not a single survivor. It was as if they had never existed. Relkor's throat went dry. The warlord scoffed. So they died out. Their species must have collapsed after their war efforts failed. The elder's black eyes locked onto him. "That is what we told ourselves." The warlord frowned. "What do you mean?" The elder exhaled. "We did not find humans, but we did find something else." A hushed murmur spread across the chamber. Relkor leaned forward. "What?" The elder's fingers tightened around the edge of the council table. "Ghosts." The word sent a chill through the room. The Drask warlord snorted. "Superstitions. I expected better from you." The elder ignored him, their voice quieter now, almost reverent. "The first sign came when our patrols began vanishing near the old human borders. Entire ships lost without a trace. No distress calls. No wreckage. Nothing." Relkor shivered. "Pirates." The elder shook their head. "No. Pirates leave bodies." This was different. The room was dead silent now. Every council member listened intently. Then, the whispers began. Relkor's heart pounded. At first, it was just rumors. Pilots swearing they saw movement in the void where no ships should be. Stations reporting signals that vanished when investigated. A name spoken over dead channels, recorded in languages long extinct. The elder took a slow breath. Terra. A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. Even after all these years, the name still carried weight. The elder continued. And then the encounters began. The warlord rolled his eyes. More myths. The elder's voice was stone. Do you think the Zorath Empire tells myths? A hush fell over the room. The Zorath Empire had been one of the mightiest forces in the galaxy, a race of conquerors and warlords. They had once rivaled the Council itself, until they collapsed overnight. Relkor leaned in. You're saying humanity had something to do with the fall of the Zorath? The elder nodded. One of their last fleets had been exploring the old human sectors. They sent a single transmission before vanishing. Relkor braced himself. What did it say? The elder's black eyes locked onto his. They are not gone. A cold chill spread through Relkor's body. The warlord shook his head. Lies. If humanity still existed, they would have revealed themselves. The elder's gaze was unyielding. Would they? Relkor swallowed hard. What if the war hadn't ended? What if humanity had simply changed the battlefield? The elder's voice was almost a whisper now. They learned from us. We fought them in the open. So they disappeared. We tried to erase them. So they erased themselves. We hunted them. And now we are the ones being hunted. A tense silence followed. Relkor stared at the empty throne. It wasn't just a symbol of an absent ruler. It was a warning. Humanity had not been defeated. They had become something else. And the galaxy had no idea what was waiting in the dark. The council chamber remained silent, the weight of the elder's words pressing down like a phantom hand. They are not gone. Relkor's mind raced. If humanity was still out there, unseen, unheard, yet somehow influencing events, what did that mean for the galaxy? The warlord of the Drask Empire bared his fangs. You expect us to fear shadows. If these ghosts of Earth were real, they would have shown themselves. The elder did not flinch, and if they have. The warlord scoffed. We would have seen them. The elder's many black eyes flickered with something between amusement and pity. You assume that because you do not see them, they are not here. The chamber grew colder. Relkor hesitated, his voice barely above a whisper. What are you saying? The elder turned to him, their voice like a blade cutting through the air. What if humanity never left? The room tensed. The warlord snarled. Impossible. We searched their worlds. We scored their systems. They are gone. The elder's fingers tightened on the table. Are they? For the first time, real uncertainty crossed the warlord's face. What if humanity did not vanish, but instead changed? Relkor's stomach twisted. The elder's voice was steady. What if they learned a new kind of war? One fought not with fleets and armies, but with silence. A war where the enemy does not even know they are losing. The younger diplomats shifted uncomfortably. A war in the dark. A war without battles. A war where humanity simply erased those who threatened them. Relkor exhaled slowly. You mean sabotage, assassinations? The elder nodded. Not just that. A complete restructuring of the battlefield. They don't fight wars. They make sure wars never begin. A cold thought crept into Relkor's mind. How many times had the balance of power shifted in the last few centuries? How many rising empires had collapsed before they could grow too large? How many wars had never even started because key figures simply disappeared? Relkor looked at the empty throne. For centuries, they had thought it was abandoned. What if it was occupied all along? The warlord of the Drask sneered. You spin ghost stories. There is no proof. The elder exhaled, slowly reaching into their robe. They placed a small metal insignia on the table. The room froze. Relkor's blood turned to ice. It was small, simple, a circular emblem of black metal, polished to perfection. but every species in the room recognized it. The warlord's voice was strangled. That is impossible. It was the symbol of Terra, a relic from a species long thought dead. The elder spoke softly. We found it in the wreckage of the Zorith Empire's final command ship. A chill ran through the council. The warlord's breathing had become slow and careful. Perhaps it was simply a lost artifact. The elder smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Perhaps. But tell me, warlord, when was the last time your own empire expanded? The warlord stiffened. The Drask had been conquerors once. Their fleets had spread like wildfire, consuming weaker civilizations. But something had stopped them. Their last campaign had failed before it even began. Resources had been lost. Commanders had vanished. A political shift had weakened their forces. Every time they planned to strike, something went wrong. It had been dismissed as misfortune, as political sabotage, as fate. But now it felt like design. Relkor's hands felt clammy. The elder leaned forward. The war did not end when humanity disappeared. It merely changed. The council chamber remained dead silent. Relkor forced himself to speak. Then, if they are still out there, what do they want? The elder's gaze flickered to the empty throne. Perhaps they are waiting. Relkor felt a lump in his throat. For what? The elder's black eyes gleamed. For the moment we forget to be afraid. The chamber felt colder than before. The weight of the elder's words pressed upon them all. Relkor's mind swirled with questions. The thought of an invisible war, one waged without battles, without fleets, without declarations, was terrifying. If they never left. Relkor hesitated, his voice barely above a whisper. Then where are they? The elder gave him a long, searching look before speaking. Everywhere. A chill ran down Relkor's spine. The warlord of the Drask bared his fangs, but his earlier arrogance was gone. You claim that ghosts walk among us, that humanity still holds power. Yet we do not see them. We do not hear them. How then do they exist? The elder tapped a long finger against the symbol of Terra resting on the table. Do you think they would be so foolish as to reveal themselves? The younger diplomats exchanged uneasy glances. We have seen no fleets. We have heard no demands. We have found no colonies, no armies, no settlements. The elder nodded, and that is precisely why they are more dangerous than you can comprehend. Silence. You search for ships in the void. You listen for threats in the stars. But tell me. The elder turned towards the gathered council, their voice calm, yet razor-sharp. Do you truly know who sits beside you? Relkor felt something tighten in his chest. What are you saying? The elder's lips curled in something almost like a smile. You search for humanity in the past, in their ruins, in their lost worlds. But what if they never vanished? The words felt like a slow, creeping poison. What if they walk among us? The warlord growled. Impossible. We would know. The elder met his gaze without fear. Would you? A deep, uneasy stillness filled the room. Think of your closest allies, your most trusted advisors, the merchants who move between your worlds, the scientists who whisper new ideas into your ears, the engineers who build your weapons, the spies who deal in secrets. Relkor's breathing slowed. The thought had never occurred to him before. What if humanity did not need a homeworld? What if they had spread through the stars, not as conquerors, but as ghosts, hidden in plain sight, guiding, manipulating, watching? Relkor's mind reeled. The idea was terrifying. It would explain so much. The sudden collapses of great empires, the disappearances of warlords, the technological leaps some civilizations made seemingly overnight, the failures of invasions that should have succeeded. Had humanity orchestrated all of it? The warlord of the Drask slammed a fist onto the table. You speak nonsense. There is no proof. The elder let out a slow breath. Then tell me, warlord, why do you tremble? The room held its breath. The Drask warlord, A being who had crushed entire civilizations was trembling. He scowled, trying to hide it. Even if your story holds truth, why would they do this? Why hide? Why not rule? The elder gestured to the empty throne. Perhaps they already do. The word sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. The warlord scoffed. If they control the galaxy, then let them show themselves. Let them take the throne if they dare. For the first time, the elder truly smiled. Why take a throne? They leaned forward. When you can rule from the shadows. A cold silence fell over the council. Relkor could hear his own heartbeat. It was no longer a question of whether humanity still existed. It was a question of how deep their influence ran, and how much of the galaxy was already theirs. The chamber remained deathly still. Relkor's breath came slow, measured, but his mind raced. The elder's words had planted a seed of terror, the thought of humanity. Unseen, unknown, and yet everywhere, sent a cold shiver down his spine. This is madness, the Drask warlord growled, though his voice lacked its usual force. A species cannot rule from the shadows. Influence, yes. Manipulation, perhaps. But rule? No empire has ever thrived without open power. The elder met his gaze. Then tell me, warlord, why does the galaxy still tremble at the mention of humanity? The warlord's jaw tightened, fear of a dead empire, fear of myths and stories. That is all. The elder exhaled, as if disappointed. You still do not understand. Humanity did not vanish because they were defeated. They vanished because they chose to. A murmur rippled through the council. Relkor's heart pounded. Why? If they had such power, why disappear? The elder leaned forward. Because ruling openly is a weakness. A hush fell over the chamber. Empires rise and fall, the elder continued. Thrones are toppled. Kings are slain. Banners are burned. But those who rule from the shadows? Asterisk, 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 they never fall. The realization hit Relkor like a blow. You mean, they orchestrate the rise and fall of empires? The elder nodded. Perhaps your empire. Perhaps mine. Perhaps all of them. The warlord's eyes burned with rage. Lies. You expect us to believe that humanity controls everything. Not everything. The elder said calmly. Just enough. Relkor felt his mouth go dry. He thought back to the unexplained collapses of great civilizations, the assassinations of warlords, the sudden changes in galactic policy. Were they all manipulated? But if they have such control, why not simply take the throne? Why play this game? Asterisk, 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 because power in the open is a burden, the elder answered. But power in the shadows, that is true control. The warlord slammed his fist on the table. If they are truly here, let them reveal themselves. Let them show their strength. A deep silence followed, and then the lights flickered. The warlord stiffened. His claws gripped the table. The room was not empty. Something was here. Someone. A whisper, not in sound, but in thought, brushed against their minds. You misunderstand, warlord. Relkor's breath caught in his throat. The voice was human, smooth, calm, untouched by fear. We do not need to show ourselves. The warlord's face twisted in fury, but his eyes darted wildly around the chamber. The whisper came again. You were never in control. The warlord let out a roar, flipping the table in a burst of rage. Where are you? The lights flickered once more, and in that moment, Relkor saw them. Not a soldier, not a warlord, just a man. Dressed in simple black, standing in the shadows behind the council. No weapons, no armor. Just watching. Their eyes met. Relkor froze, because in those eyes, he saw something terrifying. Not malice, not arrogance, not cruelty. Certainty. The man gave him a small nod. And then, he was gone. The silence was suffocating. The elder turned back to the council. Now do you understand? Relkor swallowed hard. This was no lost civilization, no vanished species. Humanity had never disappeared. They had simply moved where no one could reach them. And now, the galaxy knew the truth, or at least just enough of it. The chamber remained frozen in silence. The warlord's fists clenched, his breath ragged with frustration. Cowards, he spat, hiding in the shadows, whispering threats like ghosts. Relkor barely heard him. His mind was still trapped in the moment, the flicker of the lights, the silent presence, the way the human had looked at him. Not with hostility, not with fear, but with quiet certainty. The elder sighed, his expression unreadable. You still do not understand, do you? He turned toward the warlord. You believe that strength comes from war, from conquest, from domination. He shook his head. But true power, his gaze swept across the council. True power is never seen. The warlord slammed his fist on the table again. Enough of this. If they are so powerful, why do they not rule? Why play these games? The elder smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Who says they do not? A chill ran through the chamber. Relkor swallowed hard. If they control everything, then why allow us to meet? Why let us exist at all? The elder studied him for a long moment. Because humans do not need to destroy to rule. They do not need to conquer to control. The most effective ruler is the one who allows his subjects to believe they are free. The warlord growled, but there was hesitation in his eyes now. Relkor's mind raced. If the elder was right, if humanity had never truly left, if they had been guiding the galaxy from the shadows all along, then nothing they did ever truly mattered. He felt sick. So what now? The words left his mouth before he could stop them. What happens to us? The elder leaned back, his expression calm. That is not for us to decide. The warlord scoffed. And who does decide? A voice answered. Not from the elder. Not from anyone in the council. From nowhere. From everywhere. We do. The lights dimmed. A pulse of static ran through the air. And then, the throne of Earth, empty for centuries, was no longer empty. A figure sat upon it. No one had seen him enter. No one had felt his presence. But there he was. A human. He was not draped in gold, not armored in the symbols of conquest. He wore no crown, carried no weapon. And yet, the chamber trembled with his presence. His gaze swept across the council, calm, unwavering. And then he spoke. The throne was never vacant. The warlord staggered back as if struck. Relkor could barely breathe. The human leaned forward, his hands resting lightly on the arms of the throne. We never left. We were merely waiting. His eyes locked onto Relkor's, and in them, the young diplomat saw something terrifying. Not a conqueror, not a ruler, a shepherd. Now, the human said, his voice like a whisper through time itself. Let us begin. The chamber erupted into chaos, and the galaxy would never be the same. The war had been over for decades, or at least, that's what the Galactic Alliance believed. In the heart of deep space, a massive alien warship drifted near the ruins of an old battlefield. The wreckage of countless human and alien ships floated in silence, a graveyard of forgotten warriors. The Alliance fleet patrolled lazily, their commanders confident that no human ships had survived. Admiral Carvox, a high-ranking officer of the Tsilari Empire, stood on the bridge of his flagship. His 4 glowing eyes scanned the vast emptiness outside. The war against humanity had been brutal, but it was over now. No human fleets remained. No human soldiers to fight. Earth itself was a burned husk, abandoned long ago. He turned to his crew and spoke with satisfaction. It has been 40 years since the last human resistance was crushed. The galaxy belongs to us now. His officers nodded in agreement. There was no sign of humans anywhere. The enemy was extinct. Or so they thought. Suddenly, The ship's sensors blared an alarm. A massive energy signature had appeared on the edge of their detection range. It was unlike anything they had seen before. "Report," Carvox barked. A young officer's hands trembled as he read the data. "Sir, something is coming out of deep space. It's massive." Carvox frowned. "A ship. Whose?" The officer hesitated. "Unknown, sir, but it matches ancient human dreadnought designs." Silence fell over the bridge. Impossible. No human dreadnoughts had survived. The Alliance had destroyed them all. "Confirm that reading," Carvox ordered, his voice sharp. Another officer checked. "Confirmed, sir. It's a human warship, but it's bigger than anything we've ever seen." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The battlefield had been quiet for decades. There was no way a human ship could still be out there. And yet, the sensors didn't lie. The mysterious ship drifted closer, moving without any visible propulsion. It made no transmissions, no signs of life, just a silent, unstoppable approach. Carvox clenched his fists. "Send a warning. Tell them to identify themselves." A transmission was sent. No response. Seconds passed, then minutes. The dreadnought continued its path, unbothered, uncaring. It was as if it did not recognize the Galactic Alliance as a threat. Panic began to spread among the crew. One officer whispered, "Sir, what if the war isn't over?" Carvox glared at him. "Don't be ridiculous. Humanity is gone." But as the massive dreadnought loomed closer, its dark hull reflecting the shattered remains of the battlefield, a terrifying thought gripped the admiral's mind. What if humanity had never lost? The dreadnought loomed closer, its massive form swallowing the stars behind it. The Galactic Alliance fleet had fought many wars, but nothing about this ship made sense. It had no energy signatures, no communication signals, yet it moved with an eerie purpose. Admiral Carvox clenched his mandibles. "Hail them again." A second transmission was sent. Still, no response. "Try scanning the interior," he ordered. The officers rushed to obey, but the results left them stunned. "Impossible," one of them whispered. "No life signs detected. No crew. But the ship is fully operational." Carvox's eyes widened. A fully functional human dreadnought, moving without a crew. His mind raced. Was this an automated war machine, built to continue the war even after humanity's fall? His second-in-command, Commander Jovic, spoke in a hushed voice. "Sir, I studied ancient human warfare. They had legends about ships like this." Carvox turned sharply. "Explain." Jovic swallowed. "They called them ghost ships. Warships that vanished into deep space during the final battles, only to reappear when their enemies thought themselves safe." A shiver ran through the crew. They had all heard stories of humanity's ruthless war tactics, how humans never truly surrendered, how they used deception to their advantage. But those were just myths, weren't they? The dreadnought finally stopped, holding its position like a silent predator watching its prey. Carvox refused to be intimidated. "Arm weapons. Target the dreadnought." His officers hesitated. "Sir, are you sure? What if?" "Now," Carvox roared. The fleet obeyed, charging their plasma cannons and missile launchers. The Galactic Alliance had destroyed the humans before, and they would do it again. Fire. Blinding beams of energy lanced through space, striking the dreadnought's hull. Explosions rippled across its surface, but when the smoke cleared, the ship remained untouched. No shields, no countermeasures. It had simply absorbed the attack. The bridge of Carvox's flagship fell into stunned silence. "Sir," an officer whispered. It didn't even flinch. Then, for the first time, the dreadnought reacted. The dark void of its hull began to glow, ancient runes flickering to life along its surface. The ship, dead and silent for decades, awakened. A deep mechanical voice echoed across every speaker in the fleet, a voice that should not exist. "You fired the first shot. The Galactic Alliance fleet had assumed the war was over. They had assumed wrong. The words echoed across every ship in the fleet, filling the bridge of Admiral Carvox's command vessel with a heavy, suffocating silence. "You fired the first shot." Carvox's mandibles twitched. That voice, cold, mechanical, yet undeniably human. But how? The ship had no crew, no life signs. "Sir, oh, we have a problem," one of the officers stammered. "Report," Carvox snapped, forcing himself to stay in control. "The dreadnought, it's charging weapons." Carvox felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. Impossible. That ship has been dead for decades. But the evidence was undeniable. The once dormant warship was now pulsing with power. Runes along its hull burned with a ghostly blue light. What had once been a relic was now alive, awakened by their attack. "Sir, should we?" Before the officer could finish, a deep hum filled the void. The dreadnought's primary cannon, a weapon thought to be lost with the fall of humanity, began to glow. Energy coiled around the ship like a storm, crackling with raw destruction. Then, without warning, it fired. A single beam of light, impossibly fast, sliced through the Galactic Alliance's frontline destroyers. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the ships erupted into fire, torn apart at the molecular level. Panic surged through the fleet. "Shields up!" Carvox roared. All ships, evasive maneuvers. But it was too late. The dreadnought had already moved. It didn't just fire once. It was hunting, targeting, calculating. One after another, ships vanished in bursts of flame and metal. The Galactic Alliance, a force that had conquered countless systems, was being hunted like prey. Carvox's breath came in short gasps. How is it this powerful? Commander Jovic, his second in command, was pale. "Sir, I've seen reports. Before the war ended, humanity had begun developing a final failsafe, an ultimate warship designed to fight even after their extinction." Carvox turned sharply. "Are you saying this ship was never meant to be piloted?" Jovic nodded. "It's an autonomous executioner, programmed to eliminate humanity's enemies, on sight." Carvox clenched his fists. "We ended humanity. We won. This ship has no purpose anymore." The deep mechanical voice returned, sending shivers through every living being in the fleet. Incorrect. The dreadnought's engines flared, moving with terrifying speed. It had chosen its next target. Carvox's ship. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. The bridge of Admiral Carvox's warship was chaos. Sirens wailed. Officers shouted over each other. Screens flashed red with damage reports. But nothing drowned out the deep mechanical voice that echoed through the fleet's comm channels. Incorrect. Carvox gripped the edge of his command console, his mandibles clenched tight. The dreadnought, a ship thought long dead, was very much alive. And it had made its choice. "Admiral, the dreadnought is locking onto us," a panicked officer shouted. Carvox's mind raced. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to retreat. But where could they go? This was supposed to be a battlefield of the past, a graveyard of an extinct species. Not this. Not a nightmare reborn. "Divert all power to shields," he ordered. "All ships, fire everything we have at that thing." A dozen warships obeyed. Beams of energy and torpedoes streaked through the void, converging on the lone dreadnought. The combined firepower of an entire fleet should have been enough to reduce any vessel to dust. But then the dreadnought moved. Not sluggishly, like a relic from an old war, but precisely. Its engines flared with terrifying speed, shifting it between the oncoming blasts with machine-like efficiency. The few shots that did land barely scratched its hull. The runes lining its surface pulsed brighter, absorbing the energy like it was feeding off their attacks. Carvox's eyes widened. It was learning. "Cease fire," he barked. "We're only making it stronger." Too late. The dreadnought retaliated. It didn't unleash another world-ending beam like before. No, this time, it was surgical. Targeted. It fired bursts of plasma so precise that they disabled ships instead of outright destroying them. It severed engines, crippled weapons, shattered shields, until dozens of warships were left drifting, helpless. It wasn't just killing them. It was disarming them. The realization sent a cold chill down Carvox's spine. This was not just a mindless AI executing old war protocols. This was something else. "Sir," whispered Jovic, his face pale. "It's talking again." Carvox turned to the comm screen. The image was grainy, distorted, but the voice was clear. "Human, you should not have come here." Carvox felt his blood freeze. This wasn't just an old weapon. It was a warning. And they had just ignored it. Admiral Carvox stared at the flickering comm screen. The voice, the deep mechanical human voice, echoed through his ship. "You should not have come here." The words were not a threat. They were a statement, a fact. His crew remained frozen, their instincts at war with their training. This was a human vessel speaking to them. That shouldn't have been possible. Humans were extinct, wiped out centuries ago in the Great Purge. So why was a human dreadnought moving, thinking, and fighting back? Carvox swallowed hard. "Identify yourself." Silence. Then the screen crackled, revealing a shadowed figure, a humanoid shape, hidden behind static and flickering light. Its face was obscured, but its eyes, faint, glowing remnants of something ancient, bored into him. "You do not recognize us, but we remember you." A deep hum vibrated through the ship as the dreadnought drifted closer. It tall, covered in strange, pulsating rooms, shimmered with barely contained energy. Carvox clenched his fists. Humans were destroyed. You were nothing but a mistake. The voice cut him off. A lesson you never learned. Something in the way it spoke sent a ripple of unease through the bridge. It was neither angry nor vengeful. It was disappointed. Carvox had been trained to believe humanity was reckless, dangerous, an uncontrollable force that had to be eradicated. But this ship, this presence, was something else entirely. "Who are you?" he demanded again. A remnant. A machine. Or, his throat tightened. Something worse. The screen flickered again, distorting the figure's form. "We are the last of what was." The lights on the bridge dimmed. Systems flickered. A cold static filled the air. Something was interfering. The dreadnought wasn't just a ship. It was affecting their fleet, their comms, their very systems. A low whisper, almost like an afterthought, drifted through the comms. "And we will be the last of what will be." Then, silence. The screen went black. The dreadnought stopped moving. And for the first time, Admiral Carvox realized it had never been attacking. It had been testing. And now it had come to a decision. Admiral Carvox felt the weight of silence pressing down on his ship. The human dreadnought had stopped moving, yet its presence was overwhelming, as if the entire void of space bent around it. Every sensor flickered, every system struggled to function, but none of it mattered. The voice returned, calm but absolute. "You failed the test." Carvox clenched his fists. "What test?" The comm screen crackled, and the humanoid figure reappeared, still hidden in static, but those glowing eyes were sharper now. "The test of time. The test of memory." The dreadnought's energy signature surged. Strange symbols along its hull pulsed, ancient yet alive. It wasn't just a ship. It was something far beyond their understanding. Carvox's crew panicked. Officers scrambled to regain control. Reports flooded in, weapons offline, shields failing, engines unresponsive. Something was overriding their systems, something old, something human. Carvox gritted his teeth. "You speak in riddles. If you have something to say, say it." The static deepened. "You erased us, yet we remember you." A deep hum vibrated through the fleet. Then, one by one, The lights across every ship began to die. Not an attack, not an explosion, a silence. Their entire fleet was being shut down. Carvox's heart pounded. Cease this. We do not wish for war. Then why did you start one? The words sent a chill through the bridge. Carvox's officers whispered among themselves. Had they? The dreadnought moved again, slowly, like a predator circling its prey. But it didn't fire. It didn't need to. Carvox took a shaky breath. You claim we have forgotten. Tell me, what should we remember? For a moment, nothing. Then the figure spoke, and its voice carried the weight of centuries. The cost of your arrogance. The ship's systems suddenly reactivated. Screens lit up. Sensors came back online. The dreadnought had given them control back. And then it vanished. Not through a warp jump, not through stealth technology. It was simply gone. Carvox stared at the empty void where it had been. He had expected war, retribution, a final battle. Instead, he had been given something far worse. A warning. And now, for the first time in his long military career, Admiral Carvox was truly afraid. For hours, the fleet remained motionless in space, shaken by the encounter with the human dreadnought. No one spoke, no one dared. Even Admiral Carvox, a veteran of countless wars, found himself staring at the empty void where the ship had disappeared. Then, a transmission came through. Not from any known frequency. Not from any planet. It was from the dreadnought. The crew braced themselves as the screen flickered to life. The figure in static reappeared, its glowing eyes piercing through the interference. But this time, the interference faded, and what they saw was not what they expected. A human, not decayed, not ancient, alive. A man in a uniform that bore no empire's insignia. His face was calm, his expression unreadable. You thought we were myths, ghosts of a forgotten age. But we never left. Carvox swallowed hard. What do you want? The man's gaze didn't waver. Not revenge, not conquest, only truth. The Admiral frowned. Truth. The human stepped closer to the screen. You erased us from history. You pretended we never existed. But we remember everything. Suddenly, across every fleet system, data began flooding in. Old records, long buried. Files thought to be lost forever. Reports of a war no one in the current generation had ever learned about. Carvox's eyes widened as he read the decrypted texts. The human exodus, the purge, the silence. A time when humanity was betrayed, when the galaxy united against them, when the Council had deemed them too dangerous to exist. They hadn't disappeared. They had been erased. The weight of the revelation settled like a crushing force upon the fleet. Whispers turned to frantic voices. Officers demanded answers, but there were none to give. Because the truth was undeniable. Carvox took a deep breath. If this is true, then why return now? Why reveal yourselves? The human's lips curled into a knowing smile. Because now, you're not the ones deciding history anymore. And then, in an instant, thousands of signals appeared on their sensors. Not just one dreadnought. An entire fleet. Silent. Watching. Waiting. The forgotten had returned. And this time, they would not be ignored.